Ever feel like you're watching an HD movie and everyone else is watching on like one of those old fuzzy TVs?
Right.
Today, we're diving into what it really means to be a highly sensitive person, or HSP.
Yeah,
And spoiler alert, it's way more superpower than burden.
absolutely. And we're going to be looking at this fascinating article, Highly Sensitive People Have a Richer Inner World, by Peter Paul Parker.
Oh, very cool.
He's an energy healer with like 20 years of experience.
Wow.
And he's an HSP himself.
That's awesome. So he like knows this topic inside and out. And by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand how HSPs' brains are literally wired differently.
Yeah.
And most importantly, how to tap into the unique strengths this brings.
Yeah. One of the biggest myths that we need to bust right away is that HSPs are just overly emotional.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not about being fragile. It's about processing the world on a deeper level.
I like that.
Literally, the science shows us that HSPs have increased activity in a specific part of the brain.
Okay, so what part of the brain are we talking about here? And like, what does it actually do?
So it's called the insula, and it's essentially the brain's seat of consciousness.
Okay,
Think of it as the control center for like processing sensory information,
got it.
emotions, self-awareness.
Okay.
And for HSPs, this area is working overtime.
So they're like picking up on more details and subtleties than other people might miss.
Exactly. Like they're experiencing everything in vivid 4K while others are watching on that old fuzzy TV.
Got it.
That's why things like bright lights or loud noises can feel so overwhelming for HSPs. Their senses are just more finely tuned.
That makes total sense. It's not just about being sensitive in the emotional sense.
Right.
It's about having this like heightened awareness across the board.
Exactly. And, Peter talks about some of his own struggles in the article that many HSPs will likely relate to.
Oh, for sure.
He mentions feeling overwhelmed in crowded places, needing extra downtime to recharge, and even experiencing emotional burnout from absorbing other people's feelings.
Wow, that sounds intense. It's like being an emotional sponge, soaking up everything around you.
That's a great way to put it, and it's why learning to manage those sensitivities is so important.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
What if those same traits that can lead to overwhelm are also the keys to unlocking some pretty amazing strengths?
I like where this is going. We often hear about the challenges of being an HSP,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to explore the superpower side of things. What are some of the unique strengths that come with this heightened sensitivity?
Well, for one, HSPs are often incredibly intuitive.
Right.
They're able to pick up on subtle cues both in their environment and in other people
Yeah.
that others might completely miss.
Yeah. I can see how that 4K brain would come in handy there.
Yeah.
They're literally getting more information to work with.
Precisely. And this heightened awareness can translate into some pretty amazing abilities. Peter dives into this in his article talking about the 4 types of intuitive experiences, which he calls the 4 clairs.
Okay, the 4 clairs. I'm intrigued. Break those down for me.
So first, you have clairsentience, which is about feeling things deeply.
Okay.
It's like having a sixth sense that allows you to pick up on the energy of people and places.
So that feeling you get when you walk into a room and instantly know something's off, even though no one has said a word?
Exactly. Then there's clairvoyance, which is more about seeing things.
Okay.
It's like having visions or intuitive flashes that give you insights beyond the physical realm.
So that aha moment that seemingly comes out of nowhere but turns out to be spot on.
You got it. Next is clairaudience, which is all about hearing. HSPs with strong clairaudience might hear inner messages, guidance from their intuition, or even messages from loved ones who have passed away.
I'm starting to wonder which clair I might be most attuned to. This is fascinating.
It is. And finally, there's claircognizance, which is all about knowing. It's that sudden download of information, that knowing something to be true without any logical explanation.
Wow, it sounds like HSPs have a direct line to their intuition. But is this something they're just born with?
That's a great question.
Or can it be developed?
And Peter actually believes that everyone has the potential for these intuitive experiences,
Really?
but for HSPs, it comes more naturally.
Interesting. So it's like a muscle they can strengthen with practice.
Precisely. And that's where his dream method comes in.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
Tell me about the dream method.
It's a 5-step program specifically designed to help HSPs harness their unique strengths
Awesome.
and transform their sensitivity into a source of power and fulfillment.
Okay. I'm definitely getting curious about this dream method.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll dive into that later.
Okay.
But first, I think it's important to understand why developing intuition is so important,
Okay.
especially for HSPs. Imagine being able to tap into that inner guidance system. Right.
more consistently. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by external input,
Hmm.
you're able to filter it, prioritize what matters, and make decisions from a place of deep knowing.
So it's about moving from reactivity to empowered choice. I like that.
Exactly. And it's not just about personal gain.
Right.
Peter emphasizes that doing this inner work isn't selfish.
Yeah.
It's about becoming the best version of yourself so you can contribute your unique perspective to the world.
That's awesome. You mentioned that Peter's been on his own journey with high sensitivity. Does he talk about that in the article? I'm curious to hear about his personal experiences.
He does. He talks about how for a long time he saw his sensitivity as a weakness.
Yeah.
You know, he tried to fit in, to dim his light so he wouldn't stand out, but eventually he realized that trying to suppress his true nature was only making him unhappy and unfulfilled.
That's so relatable. So many people try to fit into a box that doesn't quite suit them. It's true. And that's when Peter decided to embrace his sensitivity and explore its potential. And that's what led him to develop the dream method.
I'm really starting to see how this all connects. But before we jump into the dream method, is there anything else you want to highlight about the challenges HSPs face?
Hmm.
You mentioned emotional burnout earlier, and I think that's something a lot of people can relate to,
Hmm.
whether they identify as an HSP or not.
You're right. That's a big one. HSPs tend to absorb the emotions of others very easily, almost like emotional sponges. If they're not careful, they can end up feeling drained, anxious, and even physically ill from taking on too much.
That makes sense. So setting boundaries and prioritizing self-care is crucial for HSPs.
Absolutely. And those are actually key components of the dream method. We'll explore that more in depth later, but for now, I think it's important to acknowledge that if you're an HSP who's struggling with overwhelm, you're not alone. There are tools and techniques you can learn to manage your sensitivity and turn it into a source of strength.
That's a really powerful message. So we've talked about the science behind high sensitivity, the unique strengths and challenges that come with it, and we've gotten a sneak peek into Peter's journey and the dream method. I'm ready to dive deeper. What's next?
All right, are you ready to unlock the secrets of the dream method?
Absolutely. I'm all ears. We've talked about the challenges HSPs face, how their brains are wired differently, and now I'm excited to learn about Peter's 5-step approach to actually harnessing this superpower.
Well, remember how Peter himself initially saw his sensitivity as a weakness?
Yeah.
The dream method is all about shifting that perspective and realizing that incredible potential within. It's about transformation, not just management.
So instead of just coping with sensitivity, it's about using it to create a more fulfilling life.
Exactly. So let's break down the 5 steps, starting with step 1. Discover.
Discover, what does that entail?
This step is all about self-exploration. It's about diving deep and uncovering any emotional wounds or past experiences that might still be holding you back. You know, it's like shining a light on those hidden patterns so you can finally let go of the baggage you've been carrying.
That's interesting. We talked earlier about how HSPs are naturally very self-aware,
Mm-hmm.
but I can see how even they might have blind spots when it comes to these deeper emotional patterns.
Absolutely. And this step isn't about dwelling on the negative or blaming the past. It's about understanding how those experiences might be influencing your present so
Hmm.
you can start to heal and move forward.
So it's about gaining awareness and then using that awareness to create positive change.
Precisely. Now, a step 2 is realize.
Realize what specifically?
This is where you start to recognize your own strength and resilience. You begin to see that the challenges you've faced,
Right.
the things that you might have perceived as weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
have actually made you stronger.
I love that shift in perspective.
Yeah,
Instead of feeling like a victim of your circumstances, you start to see how they've shaped you in a positive way.
exactly. You start to see that your negative behaviors are often just protection mechanisms, not your true self. Right? And as you start to peel back those layers,
Yeah.
you discover a wellspring of inner strength and resilience that you may not have even known was there.
That's so empowering. Okay, what's next?
Step 3 is
Embrace.
embrace. What are we embracing?
This is where you start to accept all parts of your story,
Okay.
including the tough moments. You realize that those experiences have shaped you, but they don't define you.
It sounds like this is a crucial step towards self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of pushing away the parts of yourself that you might deem negative, you're learning to integrate them and see them as part of your whole being.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even the difficult experiences have made you who you are today,
Yeah.
and that there's a beauty and wisdom to be found in every part of your journey. You begin to embrace the deeper light inside of you.
It's like a shift from self-judgment to self-compassion.
That's a great way to put it. Now, step 4 gets into taking action. It's called Actualize.
Actualize. Okay, I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
So what are we actualize?
Mhm.
This is where the rubber meets the road. You start taking concrete steps to create the life you want. You turn your dreams into reality by focusing on what truly matters to you. Remember those four clairs we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
This is where they really come into play.
So you're using your intuition to guide your actions? That makes sense.
Exactly. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by all the external noise, you're able to tune into your inner wisdom and make decisions that are aligned with your highest self. You're able to set healthier boundaries and attract more of what you want into your life.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, last but not least, what's step 5?
Step 5 is master.
Master. So we're mastering our sensitivity.
In a way, yes. This step is about ongoing growth and practice. You continue to cultivate self-love, self-awareness, and deepen your connection with your intuition. It's about recognizing that personal growth is a lifelong journey, not a destination.
So it's not like you reach master level and you're done.
Right.
It's about continuously evolving and expanding your awareness.
Exactly. And remember, Peter emphasizes that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's actually the best way to show up for others. When you're feeling grounded and fulfilled, you have so much more to give.
I love that. Okay, so we've gone through all 5 steps of the dream method. But I have to ask, what happens if you choose to ignore your sensitivity and just try to tough it out? What does Peter say about that?
That's a great question, and it's something he addresses directly in the article.
Okay.
He says that if you continue to suppress your sensitivity, those feelings of overwhelm, numbness, and being stuck will only intensify.
Really?
Yeah. You might even start to experience physical symptoms like headaches, digestive issues, or chronic fatigue. It's like your body is trying to send you a message that something needs to change.
Wow. That's a pretty compelling reason to take action.
Yeah.
So the dream method really offers a path to freedom and self-discovery, especially for HSPs who might be struggling.
It does. And what I find really inspiring is that even if you're not sure if you're an HSP, the principles of the dream method can still be incredibly beneficial. It's about tuning into yourself, healing old wounds, and living a more authentic and intentional life.
It sounds like a roadmap for anyone who wants to tap into their full potential. So how can our listeners learn more about the dream method?
Peter actually offers a free webinar where he goes into more detail about the method and shares some powerful tools and techniques.
That's great. I'm sure our listeners will want to check that out. We'll be sure to include a link in the show notes.
Excellent. And you know, one thing I really appreciate about Peter's approach
Yeah?
is that it's grounded in both science and spirituality.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of understanding how your brain works
Right.
as an HSP, but he also emphasizes the need to connect with your intuition and your higher self.
It's like he's bridging the gap between the logical and the intuitive.
Exactly. It's not about choosing one over the other. It's about integrating both sides of yourself
Yeah.
to create a more holistic and balanced life.
I love that. It's about honoring both the scientific and the mystical aspects of who we are.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this segment on the dream method, what's the one key takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
I want them to understand that this method is not just about coping with sensitivity. It's about transforming it into a source of power.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that what makes you sensitive also makes you strong, intuitive, and capable of creating a truly extraordinary life.
Beautifully said. It's a message of hope and empowerment.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What's next on our deep dive into the world of HSPs? So we've explored the science behind high sensitivity, delved into the unique challenges and strengths, and even broken down Peter's incredible dream method. But I'm wondering, what's the first step for someone listening who's thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but where do I actually start?
That's a fantastic question. And honestly, just recognizing and acknowledging your sensitivity is a huge first step. It's about saying, hey, this is part of who I am, and I'm going to explore it rather than try to suppress it.
That makes sense. Awareness is key. But what comes after that initial realization? Where can someone go to actually learn these tools and techniques for harnessing their sensitivity?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, Peter offers a free webinar where he dives deeper into the dream method and shares some practical exercises. It's a great starting point for anyone who's curious and wants to learn more.
Perfect. We'll make sure to include a link to that webinar in the show notes. But beyond that, are there other things that people can do in their daily lives to start tapping into their sensitivity as a strength?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things is learning to create boundaries. As we discussed, HSPs tend to be very empathetic and can easily absorb the emotions of others.
Right.
So it's important to set clear boundaries to protect your own energy and well-being.
That's so important. It's like putting up a protective shield so you're not constantly bombarded by external stimuli.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything drastic. It could be as simple as taking a few minutes each day for quiet reflection, practicing mindfulness, or simply saying no to things that drain your energy.
So it's about prioritizing self-care and making sure you're filling your own cup first.
Yes. And one thing I really appreciate about Peter's approach is that it encourages people to see their sensitivity as a gift, not a curse.
Mm.
He talks about how HSPs have the potential to be incredible healers, artists, leaders, and change makers because of their deep empathy and understanding of the world.
I love that reframing.
Mhm.
It's not about trying to fit in or be less sensitive.
Yeah.
It's about embracing that part of yourself
Yeah.
and using it to make a positive impact.
Exactly. And I think that's a message we all need to hear, whether we identify as HSPs or not. We all have unique sensitivities and strengths that we can use to make the world a better place.
That's a beautiful sentiment. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of highly sensitive people,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway you hope our listener walks away with today?
That's easy. Being highly sensitive is not a weakness, it's a superpower. And with the right tools and support, you can learn to harness that power to create a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling.
Beautifully said. And remember Peter's closing words from the article, be well and keep shining. What a perfect way to end this deep dive.
I agree. It's a reminder that we all have a unique light to share with the world, and that our sensitivity is a precious gift, not something to be hidden or ashamed of.
So true. Well, this has been an incredible journey of discovery, and I want to thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy these deep dives with you.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this exploration. We hope you've learned something new about yourself and the power of high sensitivity. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep shining your bright light.